Got your pencil? Got your pencil?
Yeah, I have to have my pencil. This is one of the suggestions, Dharmas, you know?
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Roll.
Roll. So welcome everyone.
Namo Tassa.
Namo Tassa, maybe at the beginning.
Start. Namo tassa
Namo Tassa
bhagavato
Bhagavato
arahato
Arahato
samma sambuddhassa.
Samma Sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed,
Homage to the blessed,
noble,
noble,
and perfectly enlightened one.
and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo Sadanto
Namo Sadanto
Suchedoye
Sajedoye
Olahuri
Olahari
Samyao Samputoshe
Samyao Sanpudoshe
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿皆如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma.
Supreme and wondrous Dharma.
Can we all do it? Do you know it? You want to recite along with it? I'm always assuming you only know it line by line. Can we do it together? You've done it every night. Here we go. Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we come to see and hold it within my sight and hearing. We vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Yeah, at the end, nobody does it. English doesn't matter. They just do that, you know. It's like the Chinese is the only real one. Yeah, learn it. Let's learn it. I do it 4 times a week, every week. And anybody, well, the answer is you don't come to listen to lectures. That's why you don't know. Oh, never mind. It's okay. Supreme and wondrous Dharma.
So, welcome everyone. We gather like every evening, and through the photo book, we're learning about the Dharma coming west through Master Hua and his disciples. And today we are in the year 1975.
Which was how many years ago?
It was exactly 50 years ago. An invitation, the message came to Gold Mountain Monastery with invitation to Oregon. One of these invitations that probably many people can think Master would like to ignore politely. It was a different.
I was one of them.
Pack and go. And rest of is the history. In 1975, the group of monks and nuns and lay people show up in the Turtle Mountains, and we hold the first Amitabha session in Oregon, done by Master Hua and his disciples. Their master, how was there?
So, very evocative picture. Is it up? Do we have it on the screen?
Okay, this one. There we go.
That's me. I'm holding the bell because I was the Ueno. I'm the guy up at the top next to the really tall monk. 1975, half a century ago. A young man came down to Gold Mountain Monastery saying he was carrying an invitation from someone who hadn't come, a man named Bill Brevoort and his wife Peggy. And he wanted Master Hua to come up to Oregon to do a retreat out in the woods. And when we heard this, we monks in San Francisco went, yeah, that's not going to happen. And Master Hua said, pack up, we're going. Just like that. We're like, we're going. So we did, and Buddha Root Farm, Fogendi, happened. And the point of telling the story, why it was significant, is it is a perfect example of Master Hua's spirit, bringing the Dharma west. 正法西传, right? The right Dharma is transmitted to the west. I would suggest that Shifu got no money for doing that. In fact, we paid for the food. We put money out to do what? To sit in the rain under a tarp in the forest on sloping land. There was only flat land there, but sloping otherwise. And we had to walk across a river to get to the place where we sat under a tarp, a black plastic tarp that the monks and the laymen had put up over our heads just the day before. For toilets, we had a pit toilet. And who was right there leading the way? Master Hua. Shifu was enjoying every bit of discomfort that we, younger people, Americans, absolutely raw, fresh to the Pure Land Dharma, Jingdu Famen. Here was Master Hua showing us how to do it by example, leading the way. Truly, the word is pioneer. Pioneer in the sense of, Kai Huang. The Chinese has a really good phrase, you open up the wilderness. He opened up the wilderness out there in the woods for 7 days, saying things like, many people would say, oh, mosquitoes, Shifu, they're eating me up. Shifu said, actually, he said, I made a deal with the mosquitoes last night. I told them, don't bite my disciples, bite me instead. And, we're like, Shifu, no, we don't want them to bite you either. He said, that's all right. If you are sincere in reciting the Buddha's name, the deal that I made was, if you recite the Buddha's name sincerely, the mosquitoes can't bite you. And if you're not sincere, then they'll bite me. He's putting the pressure on. It's like, oh boy. So he said, if you really care about your teacher, be more sincere. So it's like, well, okay. Look at the skill of this teacher in just with a few words, putting this enormous filiality pressure, kindness pressure, just humanity, the thought of I don't want them to bite my teacher, I better recite. And so, interestingly enough, people reported that the mosquitoes didn't bite. And then about day number 4, Shifu was bitten. And he said, I'm happy I told the mosquitoes that I'm donating a bit of blood to them. I'm happy to do that. I am happy to donate blood to any living being. If they want to eat my flesh, if you want to drink my blood, fine with me, so long as you make the Bodhi resolve. Now he's putting pressure on the mosquitoes. They can't just carelessly drink his blood without paying the price, which is they have to, on behalf of living beings that they are, make the Bodhi. So it's like, what an amazing, amazing teacher. So, Buddha Root Farm. I can recommend, here is a book published by Buddhist Text Translation Society, BTTS, that's us. This is this is reprint number 2 or 3. This has been reprinted multiple times. This is a very nice copy. The talks that Shifu gave during that session are full of his spirit, how he wanted to bring the Dharma to the West. Because why? The people who were asking the questions were long-haired hippies. Man, oh man, if you want to see the definition of the word hippie, look at Oregon mountain men. There's somehow Oregon, the weather of Oregon does something. The men who go there grow their beards. That's just something you do. And interestingly enough, Buddha Root Farm has continued. There was a brief break of a decade, but how many have we done now? What's the latest count?
Started probably like 20.
There's
20.
20 plus consecutive, including COVID years. We've met in Reedsport, Oregon, 20 miles east in the woods into the forest in Buddha Root Farm. So this retreat has continued year after year after year, and we have 2 or 3 of the original Buddha Root farmers, myself as one of them, return every year. So this last July, there I was in Reedsport, Oregon, in the mountains, thinking, I was first here 50 years ago. That was a mind bender, you know. So now that was just the physical reality of going to cultivate as a pioneer out in the wild west raw mountains of Oregon, where there are bears, there are mountain lions, all kinds of critters. More importantly, Shifu was teaching us the Pure Land. It was really an Amitabha session. Shifu would say, 这是第一次在西方有人在深山里边念佛，求生净土, you know. It was the very first time in America that people have been reciting the Buddha's name, seeking rebirth in the Pure Land out in the woods. In Australia, it's called the bush. But man, it was something, that event. The food, the rain, the sanitation, all those issues that we think about when we think about throwing a session, all had to be done from scratch. You have to you find a toilet, dig a pit, make it sanitary, you know, go out, buy a whole bunch of toilet paper and stock it, keep it dry in the rain. Don't let the toilet paper get wet, you know. So things like that all had to be solved. And I have to say, I remember that session as if it were, as if, you know, tonight I'm going to go get into my sleeping bag, try to sleep sitting up on the hillside, you know. So, quite wonderful. Tim Testu, last night we talked about Bhikshu Hengju. He was the Hengju. He was there. He and I were 2 of the one, let's see, how many bhikshus were there? Heng Shun, Heng Kong, 3 nuns. There were 6 Sangha members there, along with Master Hua. Heng Su, I think, that monk was also there. So that was the experience. And we had Tim Testu was quite an author, as well as being the ship's diver, the submarine diver for the Navy. And he came up with a couple lines of the Ballad of Buddha Root Farm, and I filled in the rest, and it goes like this. There was Rogue River Robbie and Jin Sung Jack, and tough meditators from the far out back, and a gang from Oakland that should have raised an alarm, gathered here together at Buddha Root Farm. Gathered here together at Buddha Root Farm. A kid from Hanoi, a guy from Iran, a girl in blue jeans who drove a truck like a man, New Delhi and New Jersey, from city and from farm, came to recite the Buddha's name at Buddha Root Farm. Came to recite the Buddha's name at Buddha Root Farm. With monks from Gold Mountain who never lie down and eat one meal in a factory in old mission town, following a Chan master whom demons couldn't harm, we pitched our tents in Oregon at Buddha Root Farm. We pitched our tents in Oregon at Buddha Root Farm. Master Xuan Hua said, recite the Buddha's name, continue through this rainstorm, day and night the same. We're heading for the Pure Land, a place where there's no harm. When Lotus born, recall we met at Buddha Root Farm. When Lotus born, recall we met at Buddha Root Farm. Isn't that a good line? Some folks feared mosquito bites and arms and legs and head. I made a deal. If you recite, they'll bite me instead. Master Hua feared no pain, even bugs he could disarm, to bring us to the western land of Buddha Root Farm. To bring us to the western land of Buddha Root Farm. So you can talk of gods and spirits and dazzling kung fu. Bodhisattvas sing in praise of Buddha's virtues, but dragons curl and tigers crouch and vow to do no harm after learning how to cultivate at Buddha Root Farm. After learning how to cultivate at Buddha Root Farm. So that's Tim Testu's paean to.
Can you just on the table there? It's sticking up.
Now, one important, so along with the various Dharma talks here, exhortations to Pure Land practice, there's a lot of Q&A from the Oregon hippies who had met Rogue River Robbie and Jin Sung Jack were there. They had their chance to talk to a Chan master, a Zen master, and boy, they grabbed it. They're Americans. I'm going to ask. So the things that Master Hua said at this retreat were to an audience of Westerners, Western ears, Americans, Caucasians. There were, I think, might have been one Chinese person at the entire retreat, Master Hua. So that's the significance of that means that Shifu was speaking for people who came from a different culture, the Western culture. And he was interpreting Buddha Dharma for the West, no excuses. This was that expedient. And something that we haven't said, not even last week, a week before, mostly because I, as a monk, don't experience coming to the monastery the way a layman would. I come from a Buddhist's, a monastic's point of view. I show up at lunch and the food is ready, I just eat, and I don't write a check, I don't make an offering, I don't handle red envelopes, So I don't experience that part of Buddhism, the financial part. But Master Hua, coming from the Chinese context, had a very broader, had a different perspective, a broader, inclusive perspective, and he made this comment. What he was doing that day at Buddha Root Farm was explaining San Da Zongzhi, the three great principles, which it's Jin Shan Si San Da Zongzhi, the three great principles of Gold Mountain Monastery. Now, Shifu had come up with them in Hong Kong, but he introduced them to the West and labeled them as Gold Mountain. 动死不攀缘，饿死不花园，穷死不求缘，随缘不变，不变随缘，保定我们三大宗旨. Right? Freezing to death, we do not scheme. Starving to death, we do not beg. Dying of poverty, we ask for nothing. We accord with conditions and still don't change. Unchanging, we follow conditions. These make up our three great principles. So we say those every single day, usually twice, morning and evening. But how many people hear them anymore? Shifu explained them at Buddha Root Farm. And from this point of view, this lens that I'm talking, from a layperson's point of view, it really is important to point this out. He said, as Shifu said, 随缘不变，不变随缘. It says we don't change, and we 造名为本事，革命为生事. We make revolution in the Sangha order, he says. Shifu says, making revolution in the Sangha is not part of the Sanda Zongzhi, the three great principles. Freezing, starving, dying of poverty, that's the three great principles. He said the last part is transmitting the Buddha's mind seal in accord with principle. What do we mean revolution? When we say 革命为生事, we make revolution in the Sangha order. This is from a monk who knows the way it's done in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Vietnam really well, and says, we're going to change it in the West. He says, because we are Zheng Fa, we have to make a revolution. Every place else is the Dharma ending age. Everywhere else is the 末法时代, the Dharma ending age. If we don't shake up the Dharma ending age, you're not fulfilling your responsibility, he said. When I say 革命, I'm talking about the Dharma ending age, turning it back to the right Dharma. He says, you all, and he's pointing to us at Buddha Root Farm, you all, he says, don't know how it's done in Asia. How is Buddhism done in Asia, he said, and we Taiwanese Buddhists know this is true. It doesn't matter, is it Dharma Drum? It doesn't matter, is it Buddha Light? Doesn't matter, is it Tzu Chi? Doesn't matter, is it Zhongtai? This is how it's done in Asia. What is it? Shifu says, for example, when you do the Lu Shang Zan, the Zaizhu line up. When you do the incense praise, the donors line up. The abbot lights the first stick of incense and hands it to the first lay person to offer. The one who wants to light that first stick, $5,000. $5,000 for the first, to be the first one in line as the lay people are there. Number two in line, he says, maybe $40,000. The first one might be 50,000, not 5,000, depending on where you are, right? Number one. Number two, 40,000. He says, and only then can you get close to the altar to offer up a little stick of incense. Do we do that at our monasteries? Is there any single place? 你们知道吗？我看着你们，你们知道不知道？哪一个道场先要5万块，才可以供香，甚至于没有债主 right? CTDB, do the donors line up? Haven't seen them. Because why? Now, I'm editorializing. Let me just read what Shifu said. He says, we don't do it that way here. No one pays to light incense. In Asia, the first person is 5,000 or 50,000, the second person 4,000 or 40,000, and the third 3,000 or 30,000, and so on. The one who gives the most money is the biggest Dharma protector. Do you think this is right? Says Shifu. Right? And these American hippies out there in the mountains like, why? Why would you do that? Who does that? You know? So Shifu says, at Gold Mountain Monastery, the poor and the rich bow to the Buddha on equal ground. There is no discrimination made. It's not the case that if you give more money, you're number one. In China, monks recite sutras for people. I said Ganjing Chan, Shifu did not play Dharma instruments because he did not want to hustle sutras and repentances for money. In China, monks recite sutras for people. Nuns recite sutras. There are nuns in Taiwan who every day have a list all day long. They are in the Wangsheng Tang, all day long, morning, afternoon. So Shifu says, for this service of reciting sutras in Buddhist Asia, you recite to help the dead, you get $10,000, sometimes $100,000. In general, the more money, the better. Now, I know this is true because at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, we'll get a phone call, 对不起，你们做后事吗？多少钱呢？ You know, 我的公公啊，我的爷爷往生了，多少钱? Right? People call up and they say, my grandfather died. Hello, do you just, how much? How much do you charge? You know, and say, excuse me? You know, what? For what? You know, so do we know you? No. Okay, call someone else. Maybe try there, you know. We don't do it. So money is regarded as all important in Buddhist Asia. The Sangha are not held in high esteem for that reason. Okay, how important is pointing this out? So it is with Asian Buddhism. If you bow to the Buddha, you have to give money. Otherwise, the Buddha won't notice you. If you give more money, the Buddha eyes might open wider. So it's the Dharma ending age, says Master Hua. And so Shifu says, things are different here in America. It's not the case that the one who gives the most money is first and the one who gives only a little has to stand in the back. We don't do things that way. It's not that we don't accept money or we look down on money, but we don't make it central. It's not the important thing. This attitude is revolutionary. This is making revolution in the Sangha. We are making revolution against what has gone astray, the improper, what turns zheng into xie, proper into crooked. This is what brings the Dharma ending age. So we are purging Buddhism of what is xie. Okay? So we want to bring the right Dharma age back. Okay, so just to say, I don't talk about this so much because it's not in my consciousness, but I know there are, I've looked at Buddhist magazines. We have Lion's Roar and Tricycle, and there are often letters to the editor where they say, I would like to be a Buddhist, but I can't afford it. Right? And you go, what? What does that have to do? Oh, so if you want to join a session at some of the more popular retreat centers, you pay, what's the basic? What did we look, Jin Chuang, what was that? We looked at a couple of weeks ago.
I think thousands of dollars.
Multiple thousands of dollars to attend a week-long mindfulness retreat, right? And you have to, they're so popular among wealthy white people, upper middle class, that you have to choqian, you have to draw lots to get the privilege of paying thousands of dollars for a week. And these are not led by Sangha, they're led by lay people, you know. So, okay, Buddhism has become the upper middle way in America. It's something for wealthy people. And clearly, Shifu saw this coming in the West and put us in a different place. And I have to say, at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, also known as Institute for World Religions, our Buddha Hall is in use almost every night. We have been there 30 years. When I was the only monk there doing everything by myself, we had a different group every single night. Catholics, we had the Reformed Jewish Renewal, it was called. We had Hindus, yoga teachers, we had Theravada monks from Abhayagiri, we had the nuns, women and Buddhists. Every different group came. We never said, there's the donation box. In fact, I was criticized because the donation box was not by the front door. It should have been highlighted. And I said, it's over there if you want to make an offering. But doing it that way, we wound up with a full donation box every week, every month. And people gave from the goodness of their heart, suishi, not because there was a price tag. So this is, and as a result, I think people do keep that sense of zhengfa, still looking at the Sangha, still alive. It's not the case that we are for hire. Monks or nuns have a price on us for the chanting that we do. So just to say, here is Master Hua starting out the Dharma in the West, truly reforming bad practices, truly turning the Dharma ending age, the Mofa, back to Zhengfa, to the right Dharma. Okay, I think that's somehow, I look past it because it's not part of my reality. I don't look for the donation box. I take the key and, open the donation box. I don't put it, so I'm not aware of it as much, but I think from a layperson's point of view, that's huge. That's a huge difference. So, okay, Buddha Root Farm, the talks that were given there.
Master, do you remember, as you mentioned, many of those participants probably didn't attend any Fahues before.
Fahui, what's a Fahui? What's a Dharma
what is
assembly?
Fahue? What is Namo Amitabha? First, Amitabha, okay, we recite for 7 days. Okay, great. No any etiquette and anything. How do you remember Master Hua gather them in? How they bring them to the Dharma? Because Pure Land is not the Dharma. What do you offer? Pure Land? Oh, please, thank you. I prefer meditation on anything else. It's quite radical to do it.
So this really important question, because of all, we talk about 5 schools in the Mahayana. There's the Chan school, everybody likes meditation. There's the teaching school where you find out what the Buddha said, let the Buddha's voice be heard in English or whatever language, in Polish, in Spanish. There's the mantra school. We're doing it right here now at Gold Coast Dharma Realm, reciting the Shurangama mantra. There's the Vinaya school for organization and the deeper structure of everyday behavior. And then there's this other one that many Westerners have not heard the story of, and it's called the Pure Land School, the devotional school. And the way Master Hua presented it, he offered it as equal footing with the Chan school, and he just put it on the calendar. Every year, when it comes to the winter solstice, the darkest time of the year, the time of the least hours of daylight, humans all over the planet at that time reach for light. Christmas, Festival of Light. Hanukkah, light 8 candles. Kwanzaa, Festival of Light. Diwali in Hinduism is all about lights, Festival of Lights. In Amitabha, in the Pure Land at that time of year, the Buddha of limitless light, Wu Liang Guang Fo, right? So every year we would gather for a week of reciting the Buddha's name, and followed by a week of Chan. So Master Hua introduced Pure Land as something that we do. And he started it with the story. Because why? So did the Buddha. This is the Pure Land teaching, the Amitabha teaching, it's 万字说. It was spoken without request. And in that regard, it's different from all the other teachings the Buddha gave over 49 years. Those sutras always came out after someone requested Dharma. But for the Pure Land, the Buddha said, you don't know this, but in the past, there was a bhikshu named Fa Zhang Dhammakara, and he made 48 vows and created a Pure Land where there's no suffering. He started with that story, and then had us recite. And this is another way to think about Pure Land, which is in India, the source of so many of the world's religions, people have heard of yoga. Now yoga, I began yoga as simply exercises, as postures, asana, right? There's the downward facing dog, and there's the baby pose, and the stork stands on one leg, And that's only one aspect of yoga. Yoga means to yoke, to put a yoke on an ox so you can make him, this big powerful animal goes left or right. Yoga is the same way. The animal is the body, and you're training it to go one way or the other. So yoga is that way, but that's hatha yoga, breath yoga. In India, when people think of yoga, drop the A, it's yoga. There are many, many kinds. There is Raja Yoga, meditation. There's Karma Yoga, service. There is the most popular one is Bhakti, devotion, devotional yoga. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, chinga, 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 chinga. Right? That's devotion, that's bhakti. And many of the religions of India are entirely focused, as is Christianity, on praise tradition. Buddhism has its praise tradition for certain people who want to be religious by pouring their heart out to a divine being. Guan Yin Pusa, Guan Yin Pusa, Guan Yin Pusa, Guan Yin Pusa. Bhakti, devotion, right? Cheng Zan Ru Lai, the second vow of Samantabhadra. That's all Pure Land. Shifu presented it to us in this context of sometimes we are sitting still, watching each thought emerge and fall, rise and fall. Other times we are focusing entirely on Amitabha, Amitofo, Wuliang Guangfo, Wuliang Shoufo, or Guanyin Pusa, or Di Zhang Pusa, Di Zhang Pusa, Di Zhang Pusa, right? So this is another way of being religious, another way of connecting to the spiritual impulse in our hearts. That's Jingdu Zong, school number 5 in the Mahayana. And it's not for everybody. Westerners are coming to it slowly. Shifu gave it to us entirely. He gave us all you can eat, Pure Land, right? The real teaching. And then when we came back to San Francisco, it was time to move up to Wanpochung, and we're focusing on that now, So it's part of our religious DNA that some people entirely go to Pure Land. We had a monk, Heng Neng Shi, an elder monk, who recited the Buddha's name so much, he had 2 strands of beads, not just one. Most of our beads are 108. Well, he had 208. He kept the beads moving all the time. Whenever you talk to Heng Neng, he was like, they never stopped. So that's for some people. And the Pure Land story is an incredible story. My experience of that I'll never forget is bowing around the Buddha Hall at CTDB. My pilgrimage was over. We were still bowing. We kept going. And one day, it was a lazy summer afternoon. I guess it was early spring. And I was about 4 p.m. We had another hour to go before we stopped. And then it was the tennis court, coming around, and here were these yellow cloth shoes that were in front of me as I was down. And I looked up, oh, here's Shifu in front of me. So I knelt down and, without thinking about it, said, Shifu, what's the best practice? 84,000 Dharma doors, what's the best practice? And I fully expected to get blasted. What are you folks thinking about that for? Why don't you single-mindedly bow to the Buddhas? That's just, you're totally scattered. But, he didn't do any of that. He said, Yao nian fo ma, shi wu liang wang. He said, recite the Buddha's name, it's limitless light. And then walked away. I'm like, okay. And to this day, I still don't. I still have not picked up. I do Tabe Jo and Guanyin Pusa. But someday, maybe when I grow up, I will be Nian Fo Ma, Bu Liang Guang. It's limitless light.
Great. So moving to the next picture, very nice picture. You can see the young mind engaged. One hand is on the English dictionary. He's looking in the Chinese characters, so to make a sense of this new language. Remember that the stories of the first attempts to translate the sutras into English?
This is Bhikshu Heng Bai, former Bruce Munson, one of this next group to leave home. Heng Bai had a real talent for language. People know that Master Hua's vows, when he was in China, were as a revolutionary in the Sangha, as a reformer who wanted to reform can mean to throw away the old and create something new. Shifu's reformation was going back to the old because the tradition had gone astray, had gotten stuck in the institution, in the church of Buddhism in China. Shifu wanted to bring it back. And the critical things that he said about another school, not the Pure Land school, but the Jiaozong, the school involved in the Buddhist teaching, the criticism was that the Chinese Sangha was selfish, he said. They didn't know to share the treasures of the sutras. Shifu's example was, he said, anytime you go into a hotel anywhere in the world and you pull the drawer open in the bedside table, you find the Gideon Bible. And we were, I went to the doctors, the Chinese doctor here last week, 1 week ago. Sure enough, right there in the waiting room was the Gideon Bible, right there in the waiting room. So people nervous about acupuncture could pick up the Bible and get some strength. The doctor is a Christian, but there was the Bible right there. And Shifu said, you can find it in the language of the country you're visiting. He said, how many times have you been to a hotel, opened the bedside table drawer, and found the Diamond Sutra, the Lotus Sutra? He said, never, right? Now, I can't say never because when I visited Guoqing Si, Zhejiang, Tiantaishan, Guoqing Si, we stayed at the Guoqing Binguan, in Zhejiang at Guoqing Monastery. And I got to my hotel room in the Guoqing Monastery Hotel, opened the drawer, and there was a Lotus Sutra right there. So there are places where that happens. Shifu said, we need to correct that oversight and make the wisdom and the power and the path to liberation available in the Buddhist sutras, available to everybody in their language. I only speak Chinese, but I'm going to find young people to help me translate. So he came to America. That's one of the first priorities. Everywhere he went, he explained sutras. Every night, every night, every night. Twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday. To say every night is not entirely accurate because Thursday nights he didn't lecture. It was student lecture night. Shifu sat in the front row listening to the students lecture. He didn't take a break. He sat there like this as you lectured. And everybody's going, the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. And louder, Shifu would say, it's the truth of suffering. You know. And he clearly wanted us to know what the Buddha said. I started out as a Zen guy. I just thought you just meditate, do zazen until you reach Kensho or Satori. I picked up some Japanese words along the way, but it had nothing to do with the Buddha saying anything. Who knew that the Buddha spoke? Well, the Mahayana does. Theravada does as well. Say the Buddha spoke the Agama Sutras, Suttas. So Shifu said, yes, these are wonderful, wonderful texts. We need to know what the Buddha said. More important, we need to know that the Buddha speaks English. The Buddha speaks English. After you all translate these sutras, I will tell you what they mean. So every night, Shifu, he would sit on the Dharma seat at Gold Mountain. This light was everywhere in the room, just like we did tonight. There would be a Qingfa. We didn't do the Qingfa tonight, we did it at the start, but he would go, you know, Namo, he didn't do Pali at the time. It was Namasadonan, so he would say, Namo Sadanto Suchedoye, Ola Hudi Samya Sampadoshe. And then he would do the bell song and have us do it, and then he would start lecturing. And he would lecture for 10 minutes, and then he would say, lean over to whoever was sitting on the right-hand side where we had a big Sony reel-to-reel tape recorder. He would say, Ni bangwo fa ni hawa. Help me translate. And then while the translator would stop the tape recorder, turn it back to the counter. That counter was really important. Counter 47. Press the button. Master Hua said, and then they would translate to the best of their ability what Shifu had just said in the last 10 minutes. Right? And then Shifu would be sitting on the Dharma seat doing his mudras. And nobody knows quite, this was Shifu practicing Dharma, helping people. And then the translator would finish and then get ready to press the record again. Shifu would go, Fani wan meo hawa. Then he would continue, 10 minutes translation, 10 minutes, like that. Every night, every night, every night. The translator would be over here translating for the audience sitting around. And then, do we have a picture of the translation assemblies in the book? Not. So at the same time, in the back was somebody sitting in a translation booth with glass windows, soundproof. They had an IBM Selectric typewriter. People remember IBM Selectrics? They had that ball that went chonk, chonk, chonk. An electric typewriter. Whatever the translator said, they would type it immediately. And that night, before they went to sleep at the end of the lecture, they would take the pages, edit them down, retype them, and then on a mimeograph machine. People remember mimeograph machines with that smell of the fluid and all? They would print out a bunch of mimeocopies, pass them out in the morning. We would take them, read them, and get ready for tonight's section of the lecture. Then they would collect the pages, prepare them to publish, and publish a translated sutra. So that's where Buddhist Text Translation Society sutras came from, that process. Early on, Shifu, he was called an early adopter of technology. We had the first K-Pro computers. The operating system was not Windows, was not Mac, was not MS-DOS, it was CP/M. Anybody old enough? Anybody know CP/M? CP/M operating system with WordStar. WordStar was remember? There was K-Pro and Digilog, these old funky computers. Computers, back then, you had one floppy disk. It was not even a small hard disk. It was a floppy disk that was the operating system. There were two slots. One was the operating system. The other slot was for the software. So you needed both of these, and it was really, really primitive, but it was the beginning of computing. And Shifu wanted us to use any tool that worked to spread the Dharma. We also had we had the very first Toshiba 100 laptop. The very first laptop was a Toshiba 100. We got one of those, and it was really a wonderful machine. So Shifu had us using any tool that would work to speed up the process of taking his explanation into print so that people around the world could 深入经藏有智慧如海, enter deeply into the ocean of Dharma and have wisdom as deep as the sea. So that was his vow. And now, we didn't know that, we thought this is how it was done in Asia, right? When we got to Asia, we discovered that people didn't lecture on sutras by and large. Part of the Mofa Shidai, part of the Dharma ending age was people don't open the sutras. They don't lecture on them. They don't. It's just not part of the experience. They're considered too difficult. They're considered too full of Sanskrit, too philosophical. Furthermore, if you explain one word wrong, you risk falling into the hells. And it's like, 你讲错一句，哎，会下地狱. You know, who is willing to risk that? That particular phrase, we actually ran into that in Malaysia, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong. So as a result, nobody dared lecture on sutras. And there's one more really, really important thing that we did not appreciate about our teacher, which was there is to this day a deep, deep custom in Asia, not only China, but in Korea, in Japan, in Vietnam, in China, perhaps in India too, which is the understanding that you don't go to the source text, you go to the commentary. Because the idea is, well, it's the Buddha, it's way too deep. We better, you know who understood? The Tang Dynasty commentators. Let's read the Tang Dynasty commentator about the Buddha's sutra. So you don't directly read the Da Bo Ro Jing, you read the Da Zhi Du Lun. You don't directly read the Huayan Jing, you read the Huayan Su Chao, right? Or the learned commentaries. And as a result, the learned commentaries come from maybe an enlightened monk, but it's full of interpretation. It's not the Buddha's wisdom. Master Hua changed that. He said, no, not the way to do it. People never get to hear the Buddha's voice. He said, in this country, we want the Buddha's voice to be heard. We want you to hear what the Buddha said directly. Your wisdom is sufficient. You have enough wisdom to interpret what the Buddha said. So he read the commentaries, Huayan Su Chao, during the day, but then he said, put the commentary to one side, go directly to the sutra. It was not done that way in Asia. That was Shifu's method. So my personal experience of this, myself and Bhikshu Heng Chao, Marty Verhoeven, got to Go Huyo down in Los Angeles the year after Three Steps One Bow. I was still on silence. We got there to Go Huyo, and Shifu brought us down that first week and said, okay, here's what you're going to do, you two. He said, you're going to explain the Avatamsaka Sutra. And we're like, for sure? He said, really, Shifu? How are we going to do that? He said, I'll give you a method. We're like, gulp. Okay. He said, lecture twice a day, after lunch and then after Wanke. He said, the lay people will come and support you, won't you? And he looked out and they're all like, yes, Shifu, yes, we'll be here. They were. They came to support it. And he said, here's my method. During the day, do your practices. Keep bowing. Keep meditating. Do your ceremonies on time. Eat one meal a day. Do your practices. And then, when you have time, open the text that you're going to be lecturing that night and take a look at it. You can read the commentaries. But when it's time to lecture on the sutra, do not take even one piece of paper up there with you. No notes, he said. No notebooks. No other texts. He said, you have to explain the sutra from your own experience. And we barely heard that because that's terrifying. Lecturing for 90 minutes, and if you don't talk, there's silence in the room, right? It's waiting for you to talk. And here's the sutra, and you have to explain from your own samadhi. Shifu said, I make Shifu sound too harsh. He was very kind as he was saying that. He said, this is my method, he said. Otherwise, he said, you know, if what works, this is my method. Do you dare do it, he said. Because here's the sutra, here's the wisdom, here's your cultivation. This is the lens that you are going to focus the wisdom light through, and there's the audience and their needs. Everybody comes with a different need to hear the Dharma. He said, those three things together make it fresh and lively and relevant to their experience, as long as you haven't closed your lens with some idea of what you think you're going to say. He said, this way, the food is fresh and tasty, he says, mixing the metaphor. He says, otherwise, you're serving leftovers. He said, it's cold. Nobody wants to eat it. He said, it's old food. We're like, okay. And so it's time to lecture. And I've got I know what the text is. And we're sitting there. He said, now, there's one more piece. He said, and I'm passing this on to any of you sutra lecturers wearing precept robes. Shifu said, what you do, here's what I do. And he also mentioned that Master Hui Sung did the same thing. When they are requesting Dharma, you put your palms together and you say, to the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 periods of time, the Dharma jewel of the 10 directions and the 3 periods of time, the Sangha jewel, the 10 directions and 3 periods of time. Please be compassionate, 慈悲, jia bei. Please, Cui Jiang Hu. He said, please give jiachi, please give me your blessing so that the things that I say correspond to the potentials of the people who are listening. Give me the wisdom to know what to say to them, to their needs. He said, you make that request respectfully, and if you are doing it rufa, they will respond, he said. And you understand? 你懂吗? 你们懂吗? You know, and so it's like, kind of, Shifu. He says, all right, try your best. And we really felt like there was extra special help before the lectures. And as soon as you had a thought of, oh, there's so-and-so, I better say something about them, you're out of the samadhi and it breaks. And you're like, there's no wind in the sails, right? The food isn't hot anymore. But as soon as you go into the sutra and somehow like just do the method, then the sutra, in a very amazing, magical way, you put your foot out onto the sea of fragrant water and this lotus holds your foot. You take another step and this lotus comes up and supports your left foot, your right foot. And after 90 minutes, you've traveled with the audience into the sutra. And the things that happen to you during the day make sense and connect. And if you are really sincere, you can see that there are a few people in the audience who are right with you, listening to every word. They're not like, you know, they're not listening out of politeness. It's like they're there in the sutra, listening along. So this is Shifu's method. And he, as a result, BTTS has all these books that we've translated and published. Shifu really did bring the Buddha Dharma to the West alive. And it's, there are other pieces of it as well. He told myself and Heng Chao that to write every hour that we bowed, we wrote for 20 minutes. So by the time we got to CTDB, we had a stack of journals of our experience bowing. And he pointed to those and he said, this is what you're going to use when you explain sutras. He said, this is your stash. This is your own personal Dharma treasures that you can use to explain sutras. So those are the stories that illustrate, that make the sutra valuable, make it, not valuable, but lively, make it fresh. So that's this picture of Hung Bai, picture Bruce Munson. There's all of that backstory to it. And I think the most significant part is that Shifu was revolutionizing Jiangjing Shuofa, explaining sutras in the world for the Sangha. I remember Master Zhen Yi Fashi from Taiwan, who was our Dharma friend. He said, when I was a layman, before I left home, he said, I had a Volvo and I would drive all over Taiwan, north, south, east, west. Whenever there was a Fa Hui, I would go and listen. I did them all. Chan sessions, Pure Land sessions. He said, the only thing I couldn't stand, I never heard a sutra lecture before your teacher started to lecture, because I couldn't stand it. They were so boring. They were so dull. They were so awful. He said, I wanted to leave home. That's how important the Dharma was for me. I couldn't listen to sutra lectures in Taiwan because they were dead. He said, your teacher, Shenhua Shangren, is different. I can't wait to listen to his sutra lectures. He makes the Buddha's voice come alive. So how important is that? Okay. Thanks for sitting here. Do we have one more tomorrow night? Do you want to?
You have two more.
Two more, okay. Want to give people a preview of coming attractions? Tomorrow's the last night.
Oh, it's tomorrow then.
Tomorrow, this is the last one. So, the very important. Tomorrow we'll learn about this story, how the city of 10,000 Buddhas began.
Oh my God.
And you can see the picture of the. Do you see
The hospital.
You have the hospital?
Hospital?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, see here, for sale, the Medicinal State Hospital and Farm. It was bought in 1976. And next year we have a 50 years anniversary of the city of 10,000 Buddhas, and we'll learn tomorrow the origin story.
Okay. When I suggest that people dedicate merit, are you doing it? You making vow? Does that actually happen? When I say, oh, let's dedicate merit, do you go in your mind quietly to yourself, I dedicate merit to, with the wish that? Hope so, because that's what you're supposed to do. Two options. Who are you dedicating to, and what do you want to have happen? That's the Shi Hui Shang Pin in the Avatamsaka. Bodhisattva says, may all living beings, Dang Yan Zhongsheng, or Dang Yan Wo Po Po, Dang Yan Guo Jia, I vow that the nation, I vow that my grandmother, I vow that all living beings, etc., whoever that is, this is your chance to really dedicate merit, to really, really do it. And over time, those vows get very detailed, very precise, because your mind is clearer and sharper and more focused. As one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, they are minds away to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise.
respect to the Venerable Master.
Good night, everybody.
Night.